None of us knows when our time is up, but most of us wish for a peaceful death at a ripe old age, surrounded by friends and family. However, sometimes life has other ideas, and people meet their end in tragic or unusual circumstances, some of which could not have been foreseen. In this video, we will explore 25 of the most unusual deaths in modern history. Barry Griffiths. We've all done it, grabbed a knife to try and separate frozen burgers after taking them out of the freezer. It's not something that you would think might end your life, but that is exactly what happened to 57-year-old Barry Griffiths. Barry, who lived alone in supported living accommodation in Powys, Wales, had not been seen for days, and police were called to his home to do a welfare check. After entering the house, they found a trail of blood leading to the bedroom where Mr. Griffiths was dead in bed. Investigators established that frozen burgers were behind the tragedy when they discovered patties on a kitchen counter. A knife and a tea towel were nearby, and the freezer door was open. An inquest into his death concluded Barry accidentally stabbed himself whilst using a knife to try and separate frozen burgers. Bliss Scott. Giant African land snails make excellent pets and are easy to care for. They can live for around 9 years and grow as big as an adult hand. But a little known fact is that they can also kill you. In 2000, a 7-year-old American girl named Bliss Scott, who was living with her family on the US Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan, tragically passed away after coming into contact with an African snail. Bliss began experiencing severe headaches, and subsequent blood tests revealed that she had contracted the roundworm parasite Angiostronglius cantonensis. This parasite develops in the bodies of mollusks like snails, which acquire it from consuming the feces of infected mice. The parasite caused meningoencephalitis, a serious brain infection with symptoms similar to both meningitis and encephalitis, and this is what killed Bliss. Her passing marked the first recorded instance of a human fatality linked to the African snail. Julio Macias Gonzalez. In 2016, a 17-year-old boy from Mexico City died after his 24-year-old girlfriend gave him a love bite on his neck. Shortly after, Julio had convulsions while eating dinner with his family, leading to a fatal stroke. Doctors believed the suction of the bite resulted in a blood clot, which travelled to Julio's brain and caused the stroke. This is not the first time a love bite has caused a stroke. In 2010, a 44-year-old New Zealand woman suffered a non-fatal stroke after getting a love bite from her partner. Alan Catterall. In 2010, 54-year-old Alan Catterall was tasked with cleaning plastic off the sides of an oven at a kayak making factory in Runcorn, Cheshire, in the UK. Alan climbed into the oven and started scraping the plastic off. However, his co-worker, Mark Francis, unaware that Alan was in the oven, switched it on, causing the doors to automatically close. As the temperature started to rise, Alan desperately tried to free himself from the oven, frantically banging on the sides with a crowbar, but the factory was so noisy, nobody heard him. Screaming in pain, Alan pounded on the door, leaving his skin behind every time he touched it. Eventually, he collapsed in unimaginable pain as he cooked alive. Workers were only alerted when black smoke coming off his body poured out onto the factory floor. But it was too late. The firm's technical director, Peter Macias, was found guilty of 2 health and safety breaches in connection with the horrific incident. Gernot Reinstadler. Gernot Reinstadler was an Austrian ski racer and was considered one of the most promising young talents of the Austrian downhill team in the early 1990s. However, in 1991, the 20-year-old's life was cut short after a horrific freak accident. During a qualifying run for a downhill race at Wengen, Switzerland, Reinstadler lost control and crashed into safety nets at full speed, where one of his skis became trapped. Reinstadler's pelvis split in two as he hurtled down the slope, leaving a trail of blood. He suffered severe internal injuries and bleeding, and despite efforts to save him, died in hospital after undergoing several blood transfusions. As a result of this incident, safety measures were improved and the holes in safety nets were made smaller so that ski tips could no longer become so easily entangled in them. The incident is considered the most horrific accident in the history of alpine ski racing. Laughed so much, he died. In 1975, a 50-year-old man named Alex Mitchell from Kings Lynn, Norfolk, was watching an episode of The Goodies called Kung Fu Kappas, which featured a kilt-clad Scotsman using his bagpipes to battle a master of the Lancastrian martial art, Eki Thump, who was armed with a black pudding. Take a look.
Pudding, cheap booties, tripe, and a piece of bark in for actors.
Alex found the show so funny, he laughed continually for 25 minutes, almost the entire length of the episode, and as a result, suffered a fatal heart attack because of the strain placed on his heart. Despite the heartbreaking circumstances of his death, Alex's wife later sent the Goodies a letter thanking them for making his final moments so pleasant. Embalmed Alive. In 2018, 28-year-old Ekaterina Fedeyeva from Russia had been diagnosed with ovarian cysts, a condition in which fluid-filled sacs attach to the ovaries. Often, these disappear on their own, but in Fedeyeva's case, she was advised to have them removed. The surgery was a routine laparoscopic procedure. Fedeyeva underwent the surgery at a hospital in Ulanovska, a city in western Russia. However, during the operation, medical staff made a tragic and irreplaceable mistake. Instead of administering saline solution, they mistakenly gave Fedeyeva formalin, a solution that contains formaldehyde, which is used to embalm dead bodies. Realizing their mistake, doctors tried to wash Fedeyeva's abdominal cavity, but it was too late. For 2 days, Fedeyeva suffered convulsions and severe stomach pains, until her death from multiple organ failure. Her family accused the doctors of murder. Beaver. In 2013, a man from Belarus was on a fishing trip at Lake Shestakov with two friends when they spotted a beaver on the side of the road. The man approached the animal to try and take a photograph. However, the beaver pounced on him, biting him on the thigh, severing an artery. His friends attempted to stem the flow of blood but were unsuccessful, and the man bled to death. Beaver attacks are rare, and according to experts, those animals that do go for humans are usually rabid. So this man was extremely unlucky. Mark Gleeson. In 1996, 26-year-old British man Mark Gleeson was told his snoring was incurable. Mark had developed sinus problems after being involved in a road traffic accident, and the snoring was a result of this. Initially, his family treated it as a running joke. However, it became more of an issue as he got older. After being told there was no cure, Mark discussed the issue with his girlfriend, and the couple came up with the idea of using tampons to block Mark's nose and stem the noise. A decision that proved fatal. The evening before his death, Mark drank some wine and took a few sleeping tablets, and his girlfriend left him asleep on the sofa at her home in Surrey, England. However, when she looked on him later, she found Mark dead with the tampons up his nose. A pathologist concluded his cause of death was asphyxiation due in part to the tampons, aided by the sleeping tablets. Isadora Duncan. Angela Isadora Duncan was an American dancer and choreographer, known as a pioneer of modern contemporary dance. She gained great acclaim for her performances in Europe and in the US. Unfortunately, her life was cut short in September 1927. Angela was a passenger in an Amilcar CGSS car owned by Benoit Falchetto, a French-Italian mechanic. Despite being advised to wear a cape, Angela opted for a long, flowing, hand-painted silk scarf, a gift from her friend Mary Desty. As the pair drove off, Angela's silk scarf became entangled in the wheel, wrapping around the open spokes and rear axle, dragging her out of the car and breaking her neck. She died instantly at the age of just 50. Slobodan Praljak. Slobodan Praljak was a Bosnian Croat war criminal who served in the Croatian Army and the Croatian Defense Council, an army of the Croatian Republic of Herzegovina, between 1992 and 1995. In 2017, Praljak was found guilty of war crimes. On the 29th of November 2017, during the announcement of the appeal judgment against him, Praljak stood up and addressed the judges, stating, "Judges, Slobodan Praljak is not a war criminal. With disdain, I reject your verdict." He then produced a small bottle that he claimed was poison and drank it. He fell to the ground and was transferred to a nearby hospital, where he passed away. An autopsy determined that Praljak was poisoned by potassium cyanide, which caused heart failure. Pet python strangles owner. On August 25, 2017, the parents of 31-year-old Dan Brandon made a horrifying discovery after they heard a loud banging coming from upstairs. His mother went to check on him and found Dan face down on the floor. She also noticed that his beloved pet snake, Tiny, was out of her enclosure. Emergency services were called, but Dan was declared dead. For over 16 years, Dan Brandon had kept reptiles, and at the time of his death, he had 10 snakes and 12 spiders that he kept in a room at the family home near Basingstoke, Hampshire, England. One of those snakes was an 8-foot African rock python named Tiny that he had had since a hatchling. His family revealed that she was his baby and he loved the snake and the snake loved him. However, they also said that as the snake had got bigger, it had become more unpredictable and was extremely strong. But despite this, they claimed Dan never felt threatened by her and she was his pride and joy, and he regularly posted images of himself with Tiny and his other reptiles on social media. Yet on this occasion, it seems the snake either turned on Dan or coiled around him in a show of affection and suffocated him. At the inquest into his death, it was confirmed that the most likely cause of death was that Tiny was engaged with Dan in some way, and possibly due to him tripping or her becoming frightened, she coiled herself tightly around him and asphyxiated him. Interestingly, there were no bite marks on Dan's body, and after Tiny shed its skin a few months later, examination of it showed there were no scratches on the surface to indicate Dan hadn't wrestled with the snake. Remarkably, Dan's mum decided to keep the snake that killed her son and now looks after her, as well as Dan's other collection of reptiles, as she believes that Tiny loved her son and had accidentally killed him in a show of affection. Death by straw. In 2018, 60-year-old Elena Strutters-Gardner from Poole, Dorset, UK, was carrying a mason jar-style drinking glass with a screw-top lid and a metal straw. Elena was prone to falling due to mobility problems caused by a horse riding accident when she was 21, and she fell with the glass still in her hand. As she hit the ground, the 10-inch metal straw held in place by the lid entered her left eye and caused a fatal brain injury. Elena's wife, who was in the house at the time, found her partner lying on the floor with the glass still intact and the straw sticking into her head. Elena was rushed to the hospital, but doctors were unable to save her and she died the next day. Henry Gillman. Hammocks are far more dangerous than they appear and have surprisingly led to numerous deaths over the years. The latest death happened to 19-year-old Henry Gillman, who was a freshman at Lewis and Clark College in South Portland, USA. On August the 29th, 2022, after a week of icebreakers, Henry had his first day of classes. Earlier that day, he had gone on a school-sponsored hike on Mount St. Helens with other freshmen, and when they returned, the group went to relax in hammocks in the Grape Arbor. 6 students, 2 in each hammock, were sitting in the slings hung in a Z pattern across 4 red brick pillars. Suddenly, one of the unreinforced columns collapsed, killing Henry and injuring 2 female students. Despite bystanders performing CPR, Gillman unfortunately passed away due to his injuries. A completely freak accident that cut short a young student's life. Henry's mother has since filed a lawsuit that seeks $30 million from the college and 2 outdoor recreation companies. Kendrick Johnson. On January 11, 2013, the body of 17-year-old student Kendrick Johnson was found in the most unusual of circumstances. He was upside down and rolled up in a school gym mat in the gymnasium of Lowndes High School in Valdosta, in the US state of Georgia. A preliminary investigation and autopsy concluded that the death was a tragic accident and that Kendrick died due to positional asphyxia, meaning he suffered as a result of being stuck upside down in an enclosed space for an extended period. Investigators concluded that Kendrick must have accidentally fallen into the center of the mat while reaching for a sneaker, which he had stored there so as to not have to pay for a locker. However, his parents thought differently and believed their son's death was suspicious and that it was not being taken seriously, either because of his race or because of a larger cover-up. And it seems they were right. In 2013, Kendrick's body was exhumed, and a second autopsy concluded that he had suffered hemorrhaging on the right side of his neck, which meant that he likely died from blunt force trauma. If this wasn't bad enough, the autopsy also revealed that some of Kendrick's organs were missing, and in their place was stuffed newspaper. However, despite these findings and years of fighting for the truth by his parents, it seems the mystery is still not solved. The latest investigation in January 2022 was closed with no charges filed, with Lowndes County Sheriff Ashley Polk stating, "There was no homicide, no cover-up, and no conspiracy in the January 2013 death of the teen. It was simply a tragic and bizarre accident." Farmer bitten to death by pet hippo. A hippo is not your typical pet, and for a good reason. They have giant canine teeth and are said to kill more humans each year than lions, elephants, leopards, buffalo, and rhinos combined. They are also lightning quick, despite weighing up to 3 tons. So when in early 2011, South African farmer Macias released a video showing his extraordinary relationship with his pet hippo Humphrey, it went viral. Take a look. Macias had raised Humphrey from the age of 5 months, and he described him as being like a son to him. However, shortly after the clip aired, there were signs that Humphrey was not the friendly, lovable pet Els portrayed, and he started showing his dangerous side when he tried to attack 2 canoeists as they made their way down the Vaal River. The terrified canoeists yelled and clapped in an attempt to drive the animal away, but Humphrey refused to move, and eventually Els managed to entice the hippo away with an apple. But sadly, this seems to have been a turning point for Humphrey, because just over 6 months later, paramedics were called to Macias' 400-acre farm, where they recovered a mutilated body that was submerged in the river. The man was pronounced dead at the scene. He had been viciously attacked and bitten, and it was unclear how long he had been there. The man was later identified as Macias. His attacker was his beloved hippo, Humphrey. Removed wrong organ during surgery. William Bryan, 70, and his wife Beverly were visiting their rental property in Okaloosa County in 2024, when Bryan suddenly began experiencing left-sided flank pain. He was later admitted to hospital for further studies over concern about an abnormality of the spleen. Although reluctant to have surgery, William was persuaded it was the best option, and on 24th of August 2024, the operation took place at the Ascension Sacred Heart Emerald Coast Hospital in Walton County. However, during the operation, instead of removing his spleen, the surgeon removed his liver and, in doing so, transected the major vasculature supplying the liver, causing immediate and catastrophic blood loss, resulting in death. Even after the operation, the surgeon believed he had removed William's spleen, saying it was so diseased that it was 4 times bigger than usual and had migrated to the other side of his body. It wasn't until later that a post-mortem revealed William's spleen was still in his body. And surprisingly, William's widow Beverly is calling for both criminal and civil proceedings over her husband's death. The investigation is ongoing at the time of writing this. Lost in the stairwell. In January 2017, Bernard Gore and his wife Angela were in Sydney, Australia, visiting their daughter, Melinda, during the holiday season. On January the 6th, 71-year-old Bernard left his daughter's home to meet his wife for lunch at the local shopping centre. However, she became concerned when he didn't show up and reported him missing to the police. Extensive searches of the shopping centre failed to locate Mr. Gore. Sadly, he was found dead 3 weeks later in a stairwell. What was meant to be a nice lunch with his wife, after he did his own bit of shopping, led to Bernard exiting a small door leading to a stairwell labyrinth that he couldn't find his way out of. The cause of his death could not be determined, but it is suggested that the stresses he experienced while being lost in the stairwell may have significantly contributed to his death. They concluded Mr. Gore's death was a result of misadventure. A sad and frightening way to go. Dennis Antiporek. In 2014, 68-year-old Dennis Antiporek left a note for his family saying that he was going to relax in the sauna at their South Florida residential community. Hours later, he had not returned, so his daughter went to look for him. When she opened the door to the sauna, she saw what she thought was a black man in the sauna. Believing it wasn't her dad, who was white, she shut the door, only to see her dad's clothes hanging on a peg outside. The man in the sauna was in fact the charred corpse of her father. It is believed the timer in the sauna failed to shut off the heat, and he cooked alive. Natalie Nemets. In 2017, a Russian woman named Natalie Nemets was cleaning a mixer in the sweet factory she worked at in Saryoskol, a town in Russia's Belgorod Oblast region, when hot caramel started gushing into the mixer. The 36-year-old mother of one was instantly engulfed by the molten caramel, with only her legs sticking out. She allegedly made no noise as she boiled alive. Her co-workers tried desperately to save her, but it was too late. The caramel had to be removed from the giant bowl before her body could be retrieved. A truly shocking way to die. Armin Schmieder. Armin Schmieder was a 28-year-old wingsuit pilot from Italy. On August 26, 2016, he live-streamed on Facebook a wingsuit base jump from the summit of the Kandersteg in Switzerland. In the footage, Schmieder can be heard telling his viewers, "Today you fly with me," in German. Take a look.
Ta-ta. Offensichtlich ist ein Paraglider unterwegs. 3, 2, 1.
As you can hear in the footage, something went drastically wrong and Armin plummeted to his death. The impact itself was not filmed as Armin had the camera in his pocket, but the sound of him hitting the ground could be heard, followed by the eerie sound of cowbells as he landed in a field of cows. Wingsuit flying involves wearing a special jumpsuit designed to increase lift, allowing for extended airtime through gliding rather than just free-falling. However, like all skydiving activities, a wingsuit flight almost always ends by deploying a parachute. It seems on this occasion, Armin's parachute failed to open or his wingsuit malfunctioned. In recent years, there have been a dramatic rise in wingsuit base jumping deaths. The trend of filming these jumps sometimes comes with a high cost, as was the case for father of one Armin Schmieder. Jahmari Reid. In August 2024, 16-year-old Jamaican high school student Jahmari Reid went spearfishing alone near his home just east of Montego Bay in Jamaica, when he went missing. Fishermen found his decapitated body the following day with injuries consistent with a shark attack. It was reported that as well as his head, an arm was also missing. Efforts were made to recover the missing head and arm, as well as hunt down the killer shark. Contrary to popular belief, shark attacks are rare, so for Jahmari to lose his life in such an awful situation is unusual. In Jamaica, there have only been 3 unprovoked attacks reported since 1749. It is believed that a tiger shark was responsible for the attack. This species is known worldwide for causing a large number of fatal human shark bite incidents and is regarded as one of the most dangerous shark species in the world. Dawn Brancheau. In 1983, a 2-year-old killer whale was captured. For nearly a year, he was kept in a cement-holding tank that was so small, all he could do was swim round and round in circles. Eventually, he was shipped to the rundown sealand of the Pacific Public Aquarium in British Columbia, Canada, where he was given the name Tilikum. Tilikum was forced to perform 8 times a day for the public, and the stress and exhaustion of this was making him ill and agitated. During his time in Canada, tragedy struck when a young female orca trainer slipped and fell into the tank of killer whales. The 3 whales pounced on her continually, dragged her under the water until she was dead. Shortly after the incident, Sealand closed down. In 1992, Tilikum was sold to SeaWorld Orlando, where he took part in the world-famous shows and became a key part of the park's breeding program. Then, in 1999, tragedy struck, and again, Tilikum was involved. The body of a 27-year-old man was found floating in the Orca pool. It is believed the young man had somehow found his way into the pool after breaking into the park. Investigations revealed that the man had been bitten several times by Tilikum, although it could not be proved that he actually killed him. Tilikum's aggression towards humans continued, and in 2010, Dawn Brancheau, his devoted trainer, became his next victim when he dragged her into the pool by her ponytail in front of a horrified audience. He proceeded to scalp and dismember her, ripping her arm off and breaking several bones in her body before drowning her. Dawn's death was a huge shock to everyone, especially to her fellow trainers, as she had an amazing relationship with Tilikum. She loved him dearly, and they believed he loved her. Following Dawn's tragic death, Tilikum was kept in a tiny enclosure with limited ability to swim or communicate with anyone. It was reported that he spent his days floating listlessly in the water, a behavior never before seen in an orca. However, just a year later, Tilikum was returned to performing, again putting lives at risk. He died in 2017 after suffering a bacterial infection. The poor creature had spent 33 years in captivity and likely hated every minute of it. The worst prepared nature photographer in history. In March 1981, Carl McCunn, an American wildlife photographer, paid a bush pilot to drop him at a remote lake near the Colleen River in Alaska to photograph wildlife. McCunn planned to stay about 5 months and was well prepared with 500 rolls of film, 1,400 pounds of provisions, 2 rifles and a shotgun. However, he later disposed of 5 boxes of shotgun shells in the river near his camp, thinking he wouldn't need them. Carl thought his friend, who was a pilot, would pick him up in August before the cold weather set in. However, crucially, he had not made any firm arrangements for this pickup. As the weather grew colder in early August and the expected plane did not arrive, McCunn wrote in his diary about his lack of foresight in arranging his departure. By mid-August, it became apparent to Carl that his friend was not coming back to pick him up. As the temperatures dropped, he expressed hope in his diary that his family or friends would come looking for him. He had some hope in late August when an Alaska state trooper flew over and saw McCunn waving casually and had no reason to believe he was in distress, so did not investigate. Eventually, snow began falling and the lake froze. Wild food became increasingly scarce, and by November, Carl had run out of food, and after developing frostbite in his hands, he lost the dexterity required to hunt for food. Carl's situation was so dire, he decided to take his own life. He pinned his Alaska driver's license to a note and shot himself with his rifle. Just before, he wrote in his diary, "They say it doesn't hurt." Carl's frozen body wasn't found until 2nd of February 1982, along with his 100-page diary. The moral of this tragic story is always to confirm your return trip. Poor Carl was left waiting for a plane that was never going to arrive. Subway horror. On September 27, 2024, 24-year-old Irina Glazunova from Moscow was being filmed by her friend. As they walked along a street singing Russian boy band Hunger Boys' hit for the last time, the song name proved to be eerily correct. Take a look. Tragically, Irina fell down a stairway leading to an underground subway in Tbilisi, Georgia. Despite desperate efforts to save her, Irina died from her injuries.